Imagine stepping out onto the moon's surface, only to realize you're not wearing a spacesuit. What would happen to your body in just 30 seconds? Would you freeze instantly, explode, or could you somehow survive? Stay tuned as we explore the terrifying consequences of being exposed to the moon's harsh environment without any protection. First, let's set the stage. The moon is a desolate place with no atmosphere, extreme temperatures, and deadly radiation. While astronauts wear specially designed spacesuits to protect them from the hostile environment, what happens if you're there without one? It might sound like a scene from a science fiction movie, but let's break down exactly what would happen to your body if you found yourself on the moon without a spacesuit for just 30 seconds. The environment of the moon. The moon is nothing like Earth. Here on Earth, we're used to having a protective atmosphere that provides us with oxygen, regulates temperature, and shields us from harmful radiation. On the moon, there's none of that. Here's why the lunar surface is so deadly. Lack of atmosphere. The moon doesn't have a breathable atmosphere like Earth. In fact, it has almost no atmosphere at all. This means there's no oxygen, and you can't simply inhale to keep yourself alive. Extreme temperatures. On the moon, temperatures can range from extremely hot to extremely cold. During the lunar day, temperatures can reach up to 260 degrees Fahrenheit, 127 degrees Celsius, while at night they can plummet to negative 280 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 173 degrees Celsius. The lack of atmosphere means there's no medium to transfer heat efficiently, leading to dramatic shifts. Radiation exposure. Without an atmosphere or magnetic field, the moon is bombarded with dangerous radiation from the sun and cosmic rays. No air pressure. On Earth, air pressure keeps our bodies functioning normally. Without it, things start to go very wrong. Let's now break down what happens to a human body in each of these conditions. What happens to your body in 30 seconds? Now let's talk about the physical effects on the body if you step onto the moon without a spacesuit. In the next 30 seconds, your body will go through several terrifying and extreme changes. 0 to 5 seconds. Loss of oxygen. The most immediate issue is the lack of oxygen. On Earth, we take for granted that we breathe air containing around 21% oxygen. But on the moon, there's no air at all. Within the first few seconds, you'd be unable to take a breath, and you'd begin to suffocate. You can hold your breath, but in space, that's actually the worst thing you could do because the vacuum would cause your lungs to rupture. 5 to 10 seconds. Boiling of bodily fluids. Because there's no air pressure, the fluids in your body, including saliva, blood, and the moisture in your eyes, would begin to boil. This doesn't mean you'd catch fire, but rather that your fluids would vaporize due to the low pressure. Blood boiling sounds horrifying, but you wouldn't feel the boiling sensation like you would with water on a stove. Instead, you'd feel intense swelling. 10 to 15 seconds. Swelling and skin expansion. Without the pressure of air, your body would start to swell as gases in your blood expanded. You wouldn't explode, as Hollywood sometimes shows, but your body would double in size. Your skin, fortunately, is strong enough to keep you from bursting open. However, the swelling would cause intense pain. 15 to 20 seconds. Loss of consciousness. By this point, you would have used up any remaining oxygen in your bloodstream. Hypoxia, a lack of oxygen to the brain, would set in, and you'd lose consciousness. Without oxygen, your brain only has about 15 seconds before you pass out. 20 to 30 seconds. Near freezing and radiation damage. You wouldn't have enough time to freeze solid, but your body temperature would start dropping fast. Meanwhile, the sun's radiation would be bombarding you without protection. Cosmic rays and solar radiation would cause damage at the cellular level. The good news is, you could technically survive for 30 seconds without long-term damage, if you were rescued immediately afterward. The bad news? After that, things would start going downhill fast. The long-term effects. While a person might survive 30 seconds of exposure to the moon's environment, staying any longer would lead to fatal consequences. Here's what would happen after the 30-second mark if you were not rescued. 1 minute. Oxygen deprivation. Without oxygen, your brain cells would start to die, leading to permanent brain damage. 2 to 3 minutes. Complete organ failure. At this point, the lack of oxygen would lead to the failure of vital organs like your heart and lungs. Radiation burns. The solar radiation would cause extreme burns on your exposed skin. Even in a short amount of time, the lack of an atmosphere would leave you exposed to harmful UV rays, which could cause significant skin and tissue damage. 5 minutes. Death. By now, the lack of air pressure, oxygen deprivation, and exposure to the elements would lead to death. What spacesuits do to protect astronauts? Now that we've covered what would happen to your body, let's talk about why spacesuits are so essential for astronauts. Spacesuits are like personal life support systems, protecting astronauts from the deadly vacuum of space and the moon's harsh environment. Regulating pressure. Spacesuits are designed to maintain air pressure around the astronaut's body, preventing the dangerous swelling and boiling of fluids we discussed earlier. Providing oxygen. They provide a constant supply of breathable air, ensuring astronauts can stay conscious and alive. Temperature regulation. Spacesuits contain cooling systems that help regulate body temperature, preventing astronauts from freezing or overheating. Radiation shielding. They also offer protection from solar and cosmic radiation, which would otherwise wreak havoc on an astronaut's cells. Protection from micrometeoroids. Finally, spacesuits provide a layer of protection from small, high-speed particles that could pierce human skin. Historical examples and experiments. There have been a few documented cases and experiments related to human exposure to a vacuum. NASA vacuum chamber tests. In one famous incident in 1965, a NASA technician was testing spacesuit technology when his suit accidentally depressurized in a vacuum chamber. He lost consciousness within 15 seconds, but luckily the pressure was restored before he suffered any long-term damage. Astronaut incidents. While no astronaut has ever been fully exposed to the vacuum of space, there have been close calls. For instance, astronauts performing spacewalks have experienced suit malfunctions, but none have led to depressurization. These examples illustrate how fragile the human body is in space without proper protection and the absolute necessity of spacesuits. Can we ever live on the moon? After understanding how hostile the lunar environment is, one might wonder, could we ever live on the moon? Lunar bases. Scientists and space agencies like NASA have long considered the possibility of building lunar bases. These bases would need to be heavily shielded from radiation, maintain a stable internal atmosphere, and provide artificial gravity. Terraforming the moon? While the idea of terraforming the moon, transforming it into an Earth-like environment, is often discussed in science fiction, it remains far beyond our current technological capabilities. Even if humans do one day establish a permanent presence on the moon, it will likely involve living in underground bases or pressurized habitats, with spacesuits remaining a vital part of life beyond Earth. Conclusion. Spending 30 seconds on the moon without a spacesuit is a horrifying prospect. From rapid oxygen loss to the boiling of bodily fluids, the moon's environment is hostile to human life in ways we can barely imagine. Luckily, spacesuits are our shield against this harsh reality. As we continue to explore space and plan future lunar missions, one thing is clear. The moon is not a place where humans can survive unaided. But with the right technology and preparation, we might just make it there and back safely. Like and subscribe for more fascinating deep dives into the science of space exploration and the unknown mysteries of our universe.